Hi everybody, Debbie here with Garden Style. So today I want to introduce to you 4 fantastic shrubs that you really should have in your garden. Um, I've been wanting to talk about these shrubs for a couple months now, and I think I've covered enough about cleaning out the garden and getting your garden ready for the month of March. And we're just about into April, so I felt this was a good time to start talking about plants, right? So I've got 4 fabulous shrubs that every garden should have. And I'm going to start with this first one right here. Look at that beauty. Isn't he pretty? And he just started blooming about a week ago. And this is an Osmanthus Delavayi. I want to be sure to say the name correctly. But this is an evergreen shrub. And it has really small, tiny leaves on it. And they're very serrated on their edges, and they kind of sit opposite of each other on the stems. But in the spring, about late March, early April, it starts to just get coated in these white blooms, and the blooms are fragrant, which is kind of neat. Now this particular variety, the blooms aren't as fragrant as, say, maybe an Osmanthus fragrans, but the Delavayi is definitely very fragrant. I could smell it in my car when I was bringing it here to talk about it. Now, why do I think this is such a great shrub? Well, first of all, it gets tall. It can get about 10 to 12 feet tall, so it can make a fantastic hedge shrub. And it's not fussy. It doesn't matter if it's in the full-on sun or in part shade. I wouldn't put it in the dense shade. You can if you want to. It would probably survive, but it's not going to give you as many blooms. So make sure it gets at least 3 or 4 hours sun, and it'll go from there. It's pretty hardy. It's hardy from zone 7 all the way up to zone 9. It can withstand, temperatures around minus 15 degrees, but I would have it in a protected area if that's the case. But for our tepid area here in zone 8, it is a perfect shrub. It's very low maintenance. I would trim it probably in the fall, being you have these gorgeous spring blooms that come up, so you don't want to cut those off, or just wait until it's done blooming and then you can give it a little haircut. And I always recommend a little bit of a haircut or a slight trim, just so it keeps it nice and dense and compact. But if you need a hedge shrub or something to cover an ugly fence, like that's what I want to do with it, to kind of block off my neighbors, this is the perfect shrub for that. Now, it's fairly fast growing. It'll grow about a foot, maybe a foot and a half a year. But I like to keep them trimmed and kind of nice and compact and neat. And that way you get twice as many flowers the following year as well. So as Osmanthus Delavayi, is there anything else I can tell you about this guy? No, I think, well, besides the soil, it can handle clay soils and sandy soils, but I would definitely make sure that it has really good drainage because it hates wet feet. And where I'm putting this one, it kind of sits at the top of a slope, by where the fence is. So I know the water is going to drain off, but it doesn't require a whole lot. You feed it once a year, give it a little haircut, and it will do the rest. So can't say enough about this shrub. I saw it coming into full-on bloom. I was like, I have got to talk about it. So that's the first one. And now the second one I'm going to show you here is what we call a Mexican orange. And it almost looks like a houseplant. The leaves are a little bit larger, they're rounded, but the neat thing about it is its new growth comes out in this fabulous like neon green yellow color. But then by late spring, early summer, it comes out with its blooms, and the blooms are extremely fragrant. They very citrusy type smell. And if you crush the leaves with your hands, they smell almost like basil. It has a basil smell to it. So I thought that was kind of a neat characteristic to this plant. Now, what I would recommend with this plant, it likes sun, but I would have it in late afternoon shade. And the reason for that is with these new leaves that are coming up, they may bleach out to a white if they get too much sun. So try not to have it in the hot searing heat late in the afternoon. And again, it will do the rest. This is another shrub that's hardy from zone 7 to zone 10. It is deer resistant. They don't care for that basil-y smell. So that's kind of a bonus if you have a problem with deer. And it'll get about 4 to 6 feet tall and just about as wide. So you want to give it some room out in the garden. but it's very long blooming once it gets started. They started blooming last year out at the nursery, and I noticed they just kept kind of spitting out blooms for the rest of the summer. So it's a workhorse, and this is just a fantastic shrub if you need something kind of light and bright out in the garden. And he has a cousin over here that I want to introduce to you as well. And this one is a Mexican orange, and this one is called Goldfingers. And you'll notice that the leaves are a little skinnier, a little pointier on the ends, so it has a little more texture to it. And this one will get just as tall, it's about 4 to 6 feet tall, 4 to 6 feet wide. And again, it's in a Mexican orange, or in the Choysia family. And we try not to confuse this with a mock orange. A mock orange is quite different. It's a Philadelphias, and once it starts to get its leaves as well as its blooms, I'll definitely start talking about that one, because it also has a very fragrant bloom to it and is also a really neat shrub. Now this one, hardiness wise, I just want to make sure, let me look this up here real quick. Same thing, it's hardy from zone 7 to zone 10, so it can actually handle a little bit warmer heat. But again, same thing as the last one, make sure it's in shade by 2 o'clock in the afternoon so that you're not singeing its leaves here. And of course, the more fine the leaves are, the more they're apt to burn in real hot sun. So morning sun, at least 3 or 4 hours worth, if not 5, and you'll just get tons of blooms starting in the late spring, early summer. So what a neat plant to have, just for this texture, if nothing else. So that's that one, the little cousin. And then last but not least, he's kind of a big one, so I've got him over here on this side. And I have this one right here. And this is called a Pittosporum. And the Pittosporum family has all kinds of varieties, anything from a ground cover to small shrubs to tall shrubs. And this one will get tall. This will get about 10 to 12 feet tall and makes an excellent hedge plant. Now the Pittosporum, this particular one, is called Ruffles. And you'll notice that the leaves are kind of curly, a little wrinkly, and they have kind of a silvery gray hue to them. So it's kind of a different color to have out in the garden. But I love it because it's so dense. And all of its new growth, you'll notice the roughly leaves are on almost black stems on this particular shrub. But it's just something new and different and has a really neat texture to it. And it's just one of many in the Pittosporum family. Now I can see already it's getting some buds on it, so it does get white blooms on it. Don't think it's anything special, it just does its thing for blooming. I don't believe they're fragrant. But this is another one that would be excellent for a hedge if you're looking for something different. And all these shrubs that I have talked about are all evergreen. So you've got year-round interest with them. But it really gets interesting here in the early spring when they all start to put on their blooms and put on their show. So there you go. There's 3 or 4 shrubs that are must-haves out in the garden. All of them very much workhorses and hardy enough to grow in our area here in Zone 8. Alrighty, so I hope all of you are getting an opportunity to get out in the garden, put a dent into the cleanup list, because we've got April right around the corner here, and that's when I start to get really busy planting. So I just felt today was a good chance for me to cover some plants that we have received into the nursery, and you may have heard about them before, you may not have, but I wanted to cover them today and just kind of get you all psyched up for some really cool things that you can start putting out in the garden. Now, I consider all these plants, because they are evergreen, a foundation plant. And that is something, that's just kind of a term we call these plants that hold their own throughout the entire season in the garden. So when everything dies back and looks pretty dead, you've got evergreen shrubs here that will still hold their color and hold their place in the garden until the following season. And sometimes you forget about them until all of a sudden they bust out into bloom like this one has. And honestly, we just had a group of them at the nursery. It was all green, and then all of a sudden I came out one day and went, oh my God, I've got to talk about this plant. And I think it's quickly becoming one of my favorites. So anyway, hope you guys are all getting your hands dirty out there and having a fabulous spring so far. I'm going to continue to keep covering plants throughout my next few videos. We've got April coming up here real quick, so of course I'm going to go over with you all the things that we can do in April. as the temperatures start to get warmer and warmer. And yeah, I'm pretty excited, and I hope you guys are too. Now, if you want to take advantage of our newsletters, you can go to sunnycrestnursery.com and you can sign up for our newsletters. I'll be popping one out here real quick. It's just around the corner, April 1st. And hopefully get these out by bi-monthly, because things are happening so fast at this time of the year. I hope to cover as much as I can with you and clue you in on all these neat things we can start doing out in the garden. Meanwhile, if you have any questions or comments, you can leave those in the description box down below. And I will have names for all of these plants in the box down below, so you can refer back without having to roll back the video. And yeah, spring is here, and I'm a little sore today. Just been doing a lot of cleanup out in the yard. All right, you guys. Hope you're having fun out there, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.